They were very concerned, should AI take my job in the next 5 or 10 years? I think secretly we are wondering, maybe in the next 10, 20 years, there won't be human managers competing each other. It's like AI engines competing with each other.
Do you want a front row seat into how AI is actually being used in hedge funds? Better than that, I'm sitting with the third generation quant investing creator, Renee Yao, and we are ready to dive into how machine learning and AI is key in investment strategy discovery. Renee, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I want to give our listeners a little bit more background. Renee is the CIO and founder of Neo IV Capital, a third generation hedge fund known for transferring leading edge science and technology into investment strategies. Renee, I'd like to start with a challenge. So just to give us your mission in one sentence, what you do and why.
First of all, thank you so much for the kind introduction. So my goal is to build a third generation quant investment framework in order to apply artificial intelligence in the financial market. And also, at the same time, advocating more women to major in quant investment. Yeah, we'll make sure it's still a merit-based hiring process. And it's not evaluated by one person, it's evaluated by the whole committee, by the whole team.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today. You are using independent research, probabilistic reasoning, and you're building inclusive culture inside of one of finance's most competitive corners. Can you explain why third generation is superior to second generation?
Yes. Well, instead of answering that, use a lot of technical details, I think I will go through a simple example.
Perfect.
When market was hit by COVID back in March 2020, it was caught in off guard. So the market SP was down 30% in March before it rebounds 20% in April. Because COVID is something unprecedented, that creates a problem for a lot of historic data-driven model. And so that's why March 2020 was a painful memory for a lot of managers who rely on historic data, second-generation quant investment. However, for our modern AI approach, because model is supposed to learn in real time, it quickly adjusts itself and pick up the rapid market change regimes. And as a result, we didn't have any drawdown at all, and we deliver very good results for both March and April.
And how would a firm using second generation have to intervene with their models to adjust for COVID?
So typically, what the second generation quant managers need to do is when they see a big drawdown like this, they will manually interfere and say, let's cut our book size, let's reduce our risk exposures. However, that approach, as you can imagine, it's based on historic data and it's behind the market information, so the result might not be ideal. Versus for us, we have something called dynamic risk allocation, which the AI system is continuously assessing the opportunities in the market and adjusting the risk accordingly. It's like a real-time weather forecast compared to a static monthly weather forecast.
Right. Oh, that's very helpful. And so since you studied historical patterns, and what is one pattern that you think is foundational that everyone should have?
The key is to look at causative information. For example, if you want to forecast whether it's going to rain or not, you want to look at the moisture in the air, and you want to look at other causal information instead of having a lot of associative information.
And in the last couple of years, with people starting to use ChatGPT and OpenAI more so on a daily basis for the first time, how has that impacted your firm?
I think it actually benefits us a lot because now we don't need to explain to people why AI is so powerful. Now, by exposing to different aspects of AI applications, people already see how powerful AI is. I think they just need to understand how and why we can better apply AI in the financial market.
Perfect. You've talked about growing up with access to one of China's earliest supercomputers. How did that early exposure shape how you think about system speed and signals?
I grew up with my uncle being a member of the Chinese first-generation supercomputer research team. So when I was 4 or 5 years old, He showed me the giant supercomputer, almost the size of 2 big rooms. So that has set up my early interest in hardcore science, like math, computing science, which is not very typical in our culture.
How did that exposure kind of shape your trajectory in starting to think about systems like that young?
Once I was exposed to ideas of supercomputers and how powerful they are, I started to think about how I can better utilize it.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from China to Kansas?
I grew up in a city where they have about 30 million people, so it's very population dense city. And I always dream about Wizard of Oz type of environment. So that's why when I applied to undergraduate, I chose all those Midwest universities. And I end up going to Kansas because that's exactly where Wizard of Oz happened. And after I spent about 3 years there, I figure I might still like better the big city.
Right.
So that's why I moved to Columbia and moved back to New York. And I've stayed here ever since.
And after earning your PhD in applied math, you moved into one of the most competitive spaces in finance. What did that transition teach you?
So I was fortunate enough to be trained as my first job, a quantitative analyst at Citadel, one of the top leading hedge fund. So at Citadel, I learned how the second generation traditional quant investment works. Basically, we look at a lot of historic data. We try to find some patterns in the historic data, and we hope the same pattern will still hold in the future. So basically, history repeated self-assumption is the main learning methodology that driven our prediction.
And when did you know that you wanted to create your own fund?
That entrepreneurship actually dates back when I was young, and especially when I was talking to the founder of Citadel, Ken Griffin, who told me he started his career as an undergraduate from Harvard dorm, and that was really intriguing. So that has attracted me on Wall Street.
Your emphasis on independence comes out in your speaking and writing. What does independent research really mean to you?
Independent research means people are used to second generation quant investment. Like the first generation dates back to 1980s, where people use simple mathematical formulas, simple implementation method like Excel spreadsheet to mimic what the long-short managers are doing. And the second generation quant methods is using historic data, looking a lot of historic patterns, and hopefully history repeat itself approach. So the third generation is different in a sense that we're not just learning from historic data, and instead we're learning from leading indicator, qualitative information, sort of like how we human learn things. Think about like when a young kid we're taught to be eat and taught to be walk, we don't feed them with millions of historic data, right? Instead, we show them some examples, and going forward, they learn from their analytical thinking approach. And that's exactly the key methodology of how third-generation quant investment work. And that is a completely independent approach compared to all the previous 2 generations.
And what's your fund's biggest goal in the next 12 months?
The biggest goal is to try to advocate more of what we mean by AI, because we've been doing AI for more than 10 years. So back then, AI was not such a hot topic as today. If you talk to 100 people, 99 will probably claim we use AI. However, what they mean is truly a rebranding of the second generation approach. So that has created a lot of confusions. So we want to explain the difference between this third generation independent approach versus all the previous generations and why this is superior.
What have you learned about communicating complex quant strategies and this difference to LPs and allocators?
A lot. So the first one is how to better explain sophisticated terminologies like concept of AI to people who might not be technical sophisticated. So we use a lot of analogies, simple examples to help people better understand.
What are some a favorite analogy?
I will think about one, which is I borrow from our head of BD. So a lot of people were confused about what AI can do. They either were like, oh, AI is just another marketing hype. It will go away like the big data 5 years ago. Or some others will be like, oh, AI is super powerful. Once I have AI, I have the whole market. But in my experience, it's either. Like AI will not give you signals with 100% accuracy that you can make all-in one-time bet. Instead, AI still wins on math. So it's like a card counting methodology. When you go to a casino, you play blackjack. Casinos don't allow you to remember cards, to count the cards, because that counting process will give you that actual 2 or 3% winning probability.
Right.
And by combining that with a lot of small bets together, with law of large numbers, that's how you generate consistent returns. And that's the same methodology for AI investment in finance.
And how do you think about transparency or opacity when it comes to machine learning layer in your models?
That's a very hot debated question. So interpretability has always been a challenging for quant investment in general. A lot of people have this stereotype, like once they talk about quant, they mean black box. Managers couldn't explain why they're making money, why we're not. However, in reality, nothing is truly a black box. Like even the most sophisticated OpenAI ChatGPT algo has different versions of improvement. So what we are trying to do is really try to explain how it works, what kind of information our AI model is looking into, and give an overall transparency to investors that they could understand better.
And when you're building your data pipeline, in a world full of data, how do you decide what to include and what to ignore?
The short answer is I don't got to decide. I let my model decides. So the whole purpose of building an AI system is to have a dynamic system that is evaluating, constantly predicting in real time, instead of like the second generation approach where once we have a pattern from 10 years of data, we assume it's a static model. However, we know in reality, nothing is static. Things are constantly changing, especially for financial market. So the key is to build this AI system so the system could constantly evaluate how valuable this information is and how much I should take into the signal processing process.
You're one of the few women who are in leadership roles and running a hedge fund. Can you speak to your passion and interest for discussing women and also diversity in these type of spaces?
Yes, definitely. One thing I observed is this is a male-dominated world in the financial market. Whenever I go to quant conferences, it's always so scarcity to see a female quant researcher, not to mention female fund manager. So we're always trying to promote women to major more in hardcore science so they can be better prepared as a quant researcher.
Do you feel people approach you as a leader, a voice in this space, differently being a woman?
There are certainly scenarios where you do feel that differences. However, our job is to try to minimize that difference and try to make the woman following us to feel less of that scenario.
And what about in fundraising?
That's a long story. So I think the biggest challenge we had through the years is the complexity of the model, of the concept. In the beginning, AI was a relatively new topic. So a lot of people were not comfortable with it, they're not familiar with it, and thus they're not comfortable with it. Now later, the recent couple of years, it's the exact opposite, where everybody claims they're doing AI. So it's a bit confusing for people to identify who's truly doing AI or not. So that's why we spend a lot of time trying to explain what we mean by AI and what is that makes differentiated compared to the first or second generation quant investment approach and why this is superior. And of course, I learned that as an entrepreneur who started my own business, when it's small, I try to do everything all by myself. And not until like 2 years ago, when I bring up our head of BD, I realized you need to leave the work to the professionals.
What would you say is the most exciting thing happening in AI related to finance right now?
Yes, well, I think it's definitely encouraging to see more and more firms start incorporating AI instead of in denial of it. In the beginning, I think a lot of firms were like, oh, I'm not sure what is AI. I don't feel comfortable about cloud computing, and thus I'm going to stay away from it. But right now, I think more and more firms realize the importance of AI and start doing research in AI. And so that's definitely a positive.
Yes. And I can imagine how being unique in using AI versus having the ecosystem really using it more, that there's benefits like competitively, right, to when you're using it a lot better than everyone, and then there's also benefits more broadly when now you can engage with maybe more players. How does that dynamic shift as you're moving from more of a competitive landscape to potentially more collaborative?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because you want to be unique, you want to have your own competitive edge, and at the same time, there's definitely going to be more and more competitive or collaborative environment as more and more people enter into the space. So I think from AI perspective, I would be less concerned in terms of competitive space, competitive aspect, because we're talking about very sophisticated models with billions of features, with billions of layers and information to intake. So the chances that with all that information, with all that different aspect, we have very similar models are very slim. So in terms of collaborative, because now more people began to realize how important AI is, we can spend more research on that, and sometimes even doing collaborative research. Like, for example, we actually have highly collaborative works with research institute, universities, trying to see if some of the academic research can be applied in the financial market, and that can be mutually beneficial.
And is there anything else, that you wish you would be able to get into?
I think the most frequently asked question is, what is the definition of AI? And what is the difference of, say, your AI compared to all the other 1,000 people who claim they're doing AI?
Right.
But also, I think I remember I went to one of the topics which were hosted by a law firm. And they were very concerned, should AI take my job in the next 5 or 10 years? I think secretly, we are wondering that question, right? Maybe in the next 10, 20 years, there won't be human managers competing each other. It's like AI engines competing with each other. But from my understanding, I think that day probably will take longer to arrive, because in the end, you can imagine AI as a super baby who has fast skills to learn, who has fast analytical skills, computational powers. But in the end, it is us human who's teaching the baby how to learn, in which directions. So I don't think we need to worry about that for maybe the near term.
Yeah. Are there other skill developments that we can, instead of focusing on what will happen to what I'm doing right this second, versus what kind of new skills are coming out, within my field that I can start to learn? Also opportunity, and maybe we focused a little bit more on kind of what's next and how to be a part of it. That could be a great future, right? I think there's a lot of fear. Obviously, you're encouraging women to enter STEM, but how do you help with those type of fears when you're speaking with young people like ready to go to college, ready to think about a career?
I think the best way, in my understanding, is to just try to show them what would be looking like as a woman on Wall Street. Because a lot of people, young people, are curious to know what the daily life of a quant trader looks like, what the daily life of a researcher who's doing AI research look like compared to the traditional quant researchers who's trying to find alphas or factors. So to better explain to them what it looks like, to help them unfold the mysteries of what they are considering, I think it will be definitely very beneficial.
And where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now, professionally or personally?
I definitely want to keep doing what I'm doing, which is trying to advocate applying AI in the financial market. I hope this concept will be more widely accepted 5 years later. And also, I want to encourage more and more students, both male and female, to enter the space of hardcore science like mathematics, computing power, computing science, operation research, so they can do better jobs compared to what we're doing today.
At the Edge for Tomorrow, we always ask, what is one trend happening now or that you see in the future that maybe others don't know about yet?
A very tough question.
Yeah.
I think in terms of its application in AI, in financial market, in different fields, we definitely see this coming more broadly, more in-depth compared to what we might think 5 years ago. And going forward, I think the competitive edge might lies on to, number one, how to make your algorithm more efficient, or number two, how to build the infrastructure that is more effective. So that might be the two approaches that people take to improve their AI experience.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. This was a fantastic discussion.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I've learned a great deal, and I enjoyed so much about our conversation.
Oh, thank you. You learned a great deal. I learned a great deal.
Yeah, this is amazing.